Welcome to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. Every week, I'll sit down with a professional comedian to unpack how they prepare for a gig, what they're thinking about while they're on stage, and how they reflect once it's over. Because great performances don't just happen, they're built. This week's guest is Jenny Collier, who's a brilliant comic that I've known for a very long time. We discuss where she finds her creative inspiration, how room setups matter, picking yourself up after a bad gig, and some of the weirdest rooms she's ever played. Enjoy. I sometimes scratch around how I'm going to start these off, but I know exactly how I'm going to start this one off, Jen, because
Right.
the reviews are in.
Uh-oh.
Ba, ba, ba.
Oh
For
God.
people, for people watching this that don't know, part of Smirk Experience are comedy nights. We got one in South London and one in the little village I live in Surrey, in Lingfield. Back end of 2025, Jenny very kindly came down to do a brilliant spot for us. And the next month, I was at a New Year's Eve party chatting to my pal Tam, who is a fan of the comedy nights. And he's like, "Oh, they're brilliant. I'm so pleased you're doing them." I was like, "Oh, thanks, thanks, thanks." And then he said, "Do you know what my favorite one was?" I was like, "Nah, everyone's different." He said, "The blonde girl you had opening the show in November." I said, "That's my friend Jenny Collier."
Oh,
Ah,
that's so nice. That would have been such a scary story if it hadn't been me when he said, "Do you know who my favorite was?" And I started to go, "Ah," and then it's like Lily Phillips. She's absolutely, and she is like that's who I thought you would. Yeah, that's super nice. Yep, yep, yep.
it was you, Jen.
Nice.
So congratulations. Me and
Thank
Tam
you.
had a 5 minute chat about loads of your jokes and stuff like that, and all of that. So
Oh,
there
that's
you
so
go.
nice.
You have a big fan of your work down in Lingfield.
Great. Oh, that's nice to know.
As a
Um,
comic, how much do you care or read reviews?
Oh, well, I've kind of tapped out of that whole world because I haven't been to Edinburgh proper since before COVID. So back then, I used to send out press releases and try and get press to come. Um, but unless you've got PR, it feels like a little bit of a waste of time because if you pay for PR, oh, straight away going off with the contentious stuff, you're paying for 4 and 5 star reviews. I don't know how they do it, but it's just like buzz is created around you and in all the private members bars where people talk. But that it seems like that. Oh my God, cut this out because it sounds like a conspiracy. But if you don't have PR, you don't get press coming to your show. Or if you do, it's people who are just trying to get their number of shows that they've seen watched and then they just write a review where they don't commit to whether you're good or bad and they give you 3 stars and they go, a show happened, no one can say it didn't happen, no one can say I didn't go to it at the end. It feels like I'm probably totally wrong and that's going to sound really paranoid, but so I've tapped out of it. I don't do that anymore.
Well, good for you. And now being, yeah, like you, it would have been pre-COVID that I last did a show, but I'm a bit out of it, and I don't mind going a little bit further than you and saying that a lot of it is absolute bollocks. I lived with a guy in Edinburgh who paid 2 grand in PR, and 2 weeks in, he hadn't had a single review.
Yes, it can go that way as well, that you pay for it, but because maybe if you don't have somebody, a big agent backing you or things like that, then even though you've paid the money, the PR is kind of in their rights. It's written in their contract that if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Sorry to say.
I
Yeah.
always think that when people quote, because people that haven't been to Edinburgh after the first day, everyone's posters are covered in 4 and 5 star reviews that they
Mm,
have supposedly legitimately got. I was once doing Edinburgh and I got an email from some, Ed Review .1 or whatever it was saying, "Oh,
yeah.
hi, we think the best reviewers are actually performers. Would you like to review shows for us while you're performing?" Because
Mm,
basically, there are so many Edinburgh shows. The people that run reviews just don't
don't
have
have enough.
the,
Yeah.
the enough people to go and see them all. So
Mm,
they are just getting anyone to be a reviewer. And I always think when you put 4 stars, you should have to write a little bit of the biog of the person that gave the review.
yeah.
Because I would say a star. I mean, they're obviously still, we're not saying the whole thing's nonsense, but
Mm,
it's been now just rung so much that
mm.
such a high percentage of them are absolute nonsense.
Yes, it's true. The last year that I went before COVID, I think it was that year, um, there was a man who, I mean, this is controversial. He asked me out. I'd met him. He was a performer, not a comedian, but in something else. I had, I don't remember if I declined or didn't reply. And then the next thing I find out, he's reviewing a lineup show that I'm in, and he gives us a kind of lackluster review and says that there's no chemistry between the acts. And I'm like, this is a joke. Like, is this seriously somebody who's allowed to pass judgment on my career and on my, um, you know, quality? No. And the very idea that people write reviews, it's one person's opinion, and there are some people who, as we know, have got loads of sway, and if you've got a review from that person, it's a major big deal. It's like, really, it's just one person, and I might not be their cup of tea. I don't want to be everybody's cup of tea, so
Well, there are
it's a load
quite
of rubbish,
often
isn't it?
they're quite often failed performers themselves. And I'm not going to mention names, but there's one in particular who I met, and I felt a little bit like Dorothy at the end of The Wizard of Oz when she meets the wizard. And it's this whole great big kind of build up, build up, build up. And
Mm,
it's like, please, pleased to meet you.
mm,
So what does everyone care about what you think?
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll tell you a really common thing people say to me when they hear I'm involved in comedy. It's a really simple question. How do you do that?
Mm.
When people ask you that question, what do you say?
I say, mm, uh, oh my God, I was about to say it's easy. It ain't easy, but it's just I'm into the kind of I'm into the groove of it now. So it's like I'm unemployable in everything else. So I just how do I do comedy? Years of um, attention seeking and practice and
Good.
gigging as much as physically possible.
When was the first time that you thought that's what I want to do?
Mm, I don't know when I knew that I would give it a go as a way to improve confidence for applying for drama school. That was my first plan. So I didn't know that you could do stand up as a job. I thought it was either a hobby or you're famous on TV. I didn't know that you could do it full time. So I just went along as like a let's see what this is about. Wonder if there'll be any fit boys. And
There
um,
aren't.
there aren't, sadly. And anyway, I started doing the open mic gigs, and then the more I did it, the more I realized you can do it as a job, and I loved it. And then the next thing I knew, it was 5 years later, and I'd been doing it full time for a few years, and it's all I do.
Quite a lot of people with a drama background would do more character acts i.e.,
Mm,
for people that aren't familiar with the industry, someone like Al Murray is a
mm,
character act. He's not like that off stage. He puts on a persona and pretends to be someone else. Quite a lot of people with a drama background do more characters than themselves. I've known some professional actors that say to me, I don't know how you do that.
mm.
Again, going back to that question. And I say, I've seen you at the National Theatre in front of 1,700 people, and they go, yeah, totally different. I'm playing
Yeah,
a character. I've got a director to tell me how to say the lines. I'm in a
yeah,
costume. I'm playing a character.
yeah.
And quite a lot of actors who turn into comedy would do character act, but you're just you, aren't you?
I am, but I did dabble in character comedy
Did
because
you?
yeah, I did. I think I did it 3 times. I was because I while I was becoming a comedian, I was also training to be a personal trainer.
Oh,
And so I did a character that was, and I've lived in Newcastle for 5 years. So I did a character that was a Geordie personal trainer that didn't know anything. And I thought it was funny. It went down all right at the 2 warm-up gigs that I did. And I was like, here we go, this is a bit of fun. And then I was in a sketch group where I tried it out again at the Leicester Comedy Festival. And one of the important reviewers that we
oh,
have or haven't discussed was there and said it was shit. I never did it again.
yeah,
so so that was a shame. That could have been that could have I could have gone down a different sliding doors route, but I do now just do as me, and have done for the last whatever 12 years. Um,
got it.
and and I think what you say about the your friend who does a show to 1,700 people with a script and a director, that is easier than what we do because we have to think about it. We have to come up with it all. Yeah, I mean, people do get directors and writers and whatnot, but really, like a lot of comedians just go through it, writing it all themselves, directing it themselves. Um, so yeah, being an actor sounds piss easy compared to. I would love to do acting. Um,
You write some brilliant stuff, Jen.
Thanks.
Where do you get your ideas? Is it a range of places? Do you find it's when I'm doing this or when I'm doing that? How does that bit work?
Oh. It's really tricky because when I started out and started writing my first jokes, they were all already things that I used to say in conversation or like funny conversations I'd had with friends. Got lots of funny friends, that helps. So you'd have this like kind of little stockpile of like self-deprecating things that you might say or whatnot. And I used to drink quite heavily when I'd meet new people and like come out with funny stuff. And people would say, "Oh, you should do comedy." And so that's where a lot of my new, like early stuff. I say early. I quite often say jokes older than the dawn of time, even now, because if it works, it works, and it still works.
Of course.
So that was how that sort of thing came about. But then other times things will come to you like I've got a 5 minute story about doing a poo sample for the doctor,
Brilliant.
and and I don't know what was going on in my brain when I did it, but I was very alert to the fact that this is funny while I'm kind of pooing into a myth of newspaper that I've made. That's it's funny, and all the stuff that goes through your head about like, and my friend telling me saying, did the doctor want the whole thing? And it happened to be a big one. So stuff like that, kind of while it's happening to you, your brain is going, I have to remember this. I have to think, and I don't know if I wrote it down as soon as it happened, but straight away it was 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and so that was a gift.
Yeah.
But usually, I don't know, like the comedy fairy has to come to you, I think. Like I when I very first started, and you know, when you're doing open mics with exactly the same people 3 times a week, you can't just show up with the same 5 minutes. So you're always trying to think of new stuff. And back then I used to sit down with a pen and paper and try and write word for word what I was going to say. So it was like, hey, I know what you're thinking. And it's all so clunky, like writing each word and
Mm.
trying to think of something funny. And then when you'd say it out loud, it was god awful. So it's like, for me, I think it has to be something funny that drops in rather than me going, where can I find some
Mm.
funny ideas and what's a funny turn, what would be a funny turn of phrase? It's like, no, that has to just either come out spontaneously talking to other people, which I hate to say that because then sometimes people think that you're testing stuff out on them, which I wouldn't. I like I probably have in my life done it, but it's grotesque. So I would norm I it's just something that you say spontaneously and then a friend or another comedian will say, "Oh, you should write that down." And those tend to be the things that I think work more organically and more authentically than when you sit down and go, what would an audience laugh at?
Yeah, absolutely right. I agree with all of that. And it is about the comedy fairy coming. I think if you're not receptive to comedy for whatever reason, you're, I don't know, tired, stressed, all of those sorts of things, the most incredible thing could be happening in front of you and it just completely whistles over your head.
Yes.
But if you're in the right mood and you're, I
Mm,
don't know, putting out the right energy to the universe, you could see
mm.
someone open a packet of crisps and go, "Oh my God, that's it."
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
it's such an interesting thing, and you're so right about making other people laugh. I'll sometimes make a group of people laugh, and one of them will say, "Oh, is that in one of your shows?" And you're like, "No, I just thought of it actually."
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the flip side of that, I don't do it so much anymore. But when I first started, I used to carpool like from London around the country,
Mm,
sometimes like 3 or 4 comics in a car.
yes.
And sometimes you have people that keep themselves to themselves, but other times it can turn into like a kind of laugh off, like people trying to kind of outdo each other. And
Yeah.
you sometimes turn up to a gig and you've kind of done all the laughs. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, oh. It's like you get on stage and it's like, oh, you lot should have been in the motorway service station back in Swindon because we were killing it.
Yes.
But yeah, I have made a car full of comics laugh, and one of them said to me, "Do you do that on stage?" And I go, "No, I don't actually." And they say, "You should." Stuff
Mm,
like that is like the older you get, and you know, some comics are weirdos, and you don't know who's on the bill and stuff like that. But um, yeah, you. It's certainly a bit of a mixed bag. You meet some nutcases that you think hell will freeze over before I get into a car with that person again to drive round the block, never
yeah.
mind to Devon. But
Mm.
there are also others where, like, you're dropping each other home at the end, and it's like the band's breaking up. I'm gonna miss them guys. What am I
Yes.
gonna do? But no, it's like I what I used to love was you 4 of you would drive there, just talk about comedy, make each other laugh, do the gig.
Mm,
Hopefully everyone has a good gig. Sometimes
mm.
3 out of the 4 do well, and one person completely tanks. And then
Yeah.
you're driving home, trying to sort of like, oh yeah, man, bad luck. But then what you do after is analyze the gig. Then it's like, oh,
Mm.
what about the bloke in the green jumper? Yeah, what did you do with him and stuff? And you're just learning. Apart from stuff like this, do you have comedy pals where you talk about comedy with?
I do, yeah. But yeah, there's definitely that thing of like with each gig, if you get a chance to what's the word, dissect what went wrong
Oh,
or
what went right?
what went right. But it's more intriguing to be like, what was going on there, and this person did that, and why were they so close at the beginning, and like it felt like we could turn them around, but all this sort of thing. Like you say, with a green room, you can you either have to go and do the gig or you all have to leave, and it's like sometimes you could dissect it for hours. We've got the whatever it's called, the specialist subject that we're all obsessed with, which is comedy. And so all of us would gladly talk for hours on end about this gig, the audience, the acts, the promoter. Like, yeah, it's
Exactly.
fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, it really is. There are so many kind of
To us, I wasn't telling whoever's listening to this, I wasn't saying, by the way, we're fascinating.
yeah, 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 yeah. Stop being so self-deprecating, Jen. This is podcast gold. No, brilliant stuff. I agree with all of that.
Mm,
Yeah, and what you said a bit earlier on is also absolutely spot on about just taking life experiences. Some of the workshops we do are to do with storytelling. And one of the things I tell people is to keep a kind of story bank,
mm,
stuff that happens to them. Nothing is wasted, whatever it is, whether
mm,
it's good or bad or happy or sad or whatever it is.
mm,
There's something that you've got a first-hand experience in
mm,
that other people will be curious.
mm.
And, pooing into a paper mitt is a perfect example of that. And
If the comedy fairy doesn't visit you while you've got your hand behind your bum trying to catch a poo, then I can't help you.
give it up. Exactly. And people say that toilet humor is not funny are just morons. They're
Yeah,
just wrong.
yes, yeah.
I don't know if you could do a whole hour on it. I'm sure someone's tried in the history of festivals, but oh yeah, there's definitely stuff in there. But yeah, keep it just a kind of a unique story. Don't Google stories about courage or
No,
disgusting.
no,
Just think, what do I tell people about at parties? What are the
mm,
things? That's
yeah,
that's the point.
yes,
When people ask about how do you do that when they hear you're a comic, a big thing they're talking about, I think, is conquering nerves. Let's
mm,
talk a little bit about your relationship. How about you talk me through your relationship with nerves from your early gigs to your current gigs? What's been the kind of trajectory?
interesting. Well, early gigs, there were nerves, but it was more. I'd have a glass of wine before I went on, and it was some of my friends were there to support, so they're laughing. Like the very first gig, I had like five friends came along, and that made up about a third of the audience. And so, although you're nervous, it's a different kind of nerves because it's very low pressure. The stakes are so low. It is what it is. But then now, I don't get nervous as such just for a normal club gig at the weekend. But if there's somebody I know, like if my sisters or parents come, or you know, there's something weird happening in the room, or the audience are a bit iffy, so you have to go off piste, or there's an agent in the room, or some high powered exec, or something that means that there is higher stakes, or it's a gig that you really want to make sure you come back to, and the promoter's watching, and so there's loads of factors that can make it feel much more nerve wracking. And then there's other times where you go, this will be fine, and it is fine because you're not adding any like undue pressure to yourself.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but it can take you in different ways. Like if you've just eaten a meal or something and you're a bit full, then it can mess with your like timing or whatnot. And so then suddenly, as soon as you've noticed that you're a bit off, then you can feel the kind of palpitations rising because you're like, oh, this could go a different kind of way. But yeah, so many different things can affect it, I think.
I was told you shouldn't eat any less than 2 hours once before you go on stage
Mm.
for that reason.
Mm,
Right. Tell me about a time when the dials are turned up for any of those reasons that you said.
mm.
Pick maybe it's an iffy crowd and there's an agent in, and you've just eaten the three-course meal 2 minutes before you went on. Maybe not the meal, but you know what I mean.
I've got the exact story for you. It includes all of those things. So I'd been out for a meal in the kind of mid-afternoon. I'd had a massive fish and chips, and I went along to a gig that I thought was a new material gig. I'd been called in last minute to MC a new material gig, and I was also doing a challenge to myself at the time, which was wear everything I own because I've got a bunch of clothes that I never wear, and it's like I should either throw them out or just wear them. So I was going through a bit of a phase of wearing mad outfit choices.
Love it.
So I was wearing a crop top t-shirt, but with a like big poofy skirt, which I never would wear, and trainers. And I had just had a fish and chips. And I get there for this new material gig that I'm just like, the stakes couldn't be lower. And it turns out, Sam, that it's a run through for people to do their set for the last time before Apollo. And Anthony Caveney is there, who books Live at the Apollo. And so I go, oh, goodness me, that's different than what I thought was happening. But I'm thick because all my blood is in my stomach sorting out the fish and chips rather than my quickness. But also, I don't know if it was my clothes or if it was just something about my essence, but the audience hated me and
Oh,
I couldn't bring them round. And it was just really awkward and uncomfortable. And I referenced it a couple of times, and like the audience were like, haha, yeah, we do hate you. Like, there wasn't any like, no, haha, we're just having a nice time, or no, we're just reserved. It was like, no, we hate everything you stand for. And and I was just like, this is a disaster. This could not be more of a disaster. And then afterwards, I saw Anthony, and I was like, it normally goes better than that. And as well, I was really hoping that he wouldn't remember my name, but he was like, oh yeah, Jenny, I've seen you before, and it's like, oh God. So it's really cemented, yeah.
go
So
on.
that was a real a clusterfuck, if you will.
Yes, I will. I absolutely will. No, there's plenty to. I've only had that happen to me once as an MC. Like now, because I've got like young kids hacking around the country is not as much fun for me. So I mainly host smirk shows, and that means that I can do them more regularly than if I was just doing spots. And
Mm,
I've only ever had it once in my career. It was a smirk night we were running in Peckham. And yeah, it's fascinating to think about the sort of chemical balance in the room
yeah.
for people to decide that they don't like you.
Yes.
And it was quite a large crowd. There was a guy called Al LaBelle who was on, who'd done the David Letterman show 5 times. And I'm just bombing
Oh no.
horrendously. And the worst thing, and you'll know this, if you've got a normal spot and you bomb, you just leave the stage, pack up your shit in the green room, and get out
Mm,
of there and put a big black mark on that uh, part of the map and say,
mm.
yes, sod you, Milton Keynes. I'll never darken your door again.
Yeah.
But when you're the MC, you've got to keep going back on, hello, me again.
I sometimes think that's a good thing though, because I go, oh, at least I can clear my name. So if I have a slightly iffy start, I go, well, because I make no secret of this. I tell everybody when I MC, I just chop my set up into however many bits. I don't go, what do you do for a living? And try and spin gold out of that. It's just not what I do.
Yeah.
But if there's been like a weird vibe, and so then you do have to talk to them and do have to go, right, what's the deal here? You have to bring them in more. If that goes badly, I go, well, I'll win them back in the next section when I'm going to do this bit of material that looks, you start it off with what looks like crowd work, like who's drinking, blah blah blah. Here's my bit about sobriety, or who's from wherever we are. I'm from Wales. So when you then like do material that you feel works most places, you're like, well, I'll clear my name, and by the end of the night, I'll
Yeah.
they won't be giving me a hate follow. It might be a you were okay follow. But this particular night, I never got them. I never got them until
No.
I think at the very end when I said I get more Instagram followers from gigs where it's been weird like this, because people go, what will become of that girl? And they laughed. But I think Anthony had gone by that. Not that it's just about him, but like, yeah, really, really unfortunate.
I don't want to dwell on the negative for too long, but
Mm,
I think
it's
stand-up
fun though.
comedy is a very exposing thing, isn't it?
Mm,
You're kind of
mm,
bearing your soul
yeah,
to a room full of strangers,
yeah.
and the laughter means that they like you
Mm,
or not.
yes.
I'm not just asking you this because for people that don't know, there are only two types of comics, diers and liars. Anyone that says they've never died at a gig ain't been going very long. Any
Mm,
comic that anyone listening to this can think of could tell you stories about crashing and burning.
mm,
Obviously, it doesn't happen very often to a comic as experienced and talented as you, Jen. But when it does happen,
yeah.
have you got any kind of, I don't know what, coping mechanisms? How do you quantify it so you can get back on the horse?
Get back on the horse at the gig or get back on the horse to do the next gig?
Next gig.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, I feel there've been some deaths that I've had where you leave the gig going, I could become a lawyer. I'll start a new life.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
I was wrong. I thought I could do this, but I got it wrong, and it's time to move on. This is a
Hmm.
phase.
Hmm. Yep.
And so you do leave kind of going, what, or if you do an Edinburgh show where you've done a whole hour that yesterday smashed, and then today they hated you, they hate everything you stand for, and they didn't get why you would ever think any part of that was funny. You kind of think to yourself, I've got this wrong this whole time. But it's funny how like Millikan's law.
No, go
Right.
on, explain
So,
it.
now I hope I get this right. But years ago, she was on, I think it was Pod, and she said, if you have to not, you have to let go of whatever the gig the night before was by 11 a.m. the next day. So if you died by 11 a.m. the next day, you have to have let it go. And if you absolutely killed it, you have to let that go too. Because if you go into your next gig going, I'm the fucking best at this,
Mhm.
then you're going to fall on your face. And if you go in going, I'm not very good at this, then you might not even go and do the gig. So I think it's a really good thing to hear when you're like starting out, which I was when I first heard it.
Mm.
But I also think it naturally happens because we're sort of uh, I don't know, because we've all got a certain level of delusion that means that we do want to continue doing this, and we do see this as a viable life choice.
Mm.
So I had one really awful death. It was a Christmas like private do, and I
God.
did half an hour, no MC, and I was opening the show in Epping Forest, and I absolutely died for half an hour. The last 5 minutes, I think they realized that I wasn't scared and I wasn't going anywhere. And I just spent that last 5 minutes talking about how much they hated me. And by then they were like, she's pretty funny, this girl. Anyway, I had really comprehensively died for most of it. But I had to drive to, I was doubling. So I had to go and drive to another gig. And I very rarely get it where I've got like the shakes, but it had been so visceral, such a visceral death. It was like I thought my teeth were going to fall out. I died so hard. But I had to go and just drive to another gig and just do it. And then that's a fresh audience who don't know anything about
Of course
the
not.
fact that you've just eaten shit for half an hour. And they've already had an opening act and an MC, and they've been a receptive audience that are there for a comedy night. And you just have to bring like fresh eyes to it and go, these people didn't hurt me.
Yeah,
These people want
yeah.
a nice, funny time. And so, yeah, you just have to
Did you
take.
did you do all right for the second gig?
Yeah, the second gig was a delightful palate cleanser.
That's the skill. That's the
Yeah.
skill. It's what is it they say? It's easy to have a good gig when you're in a good mood or a bad gig when you're in a bad mood, but the pros have a good gig when they're in a bad mood.
Mm, mm.
And that's obviously Millikan's 11 a.m. law doesn't apply if you're doubling up.
Yeah, yeah.
Doubling up, by the way, for people not in the trade, is when you have two gigs in one night. So you would open one show as your second show is starting and be at the second one in time to close the show. That's what Jenny was referring to there. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. You might not be big into cricket, but there's a story that I think you would get people that aren't cricket fans. There used to be a bloke who captained England called Andrew Strauss. And if you're a batsman, a good score is 100 because that's 100 runs, and a bad score is a duck, and that means because you haven't scored any runs. And I once heard someone talk about playing with him, and they said you wouldn't know in the dressing room if he'd got a duck or he'd got 100.
Wow.
He
Yeah.
was exactly the same guy, and that is a skill, and that's
Yeah.
hard. And by the way, what Jenny was saying about corporate gigs where, like, like Christmas gigs, often when a whole Christmas party goes out, a big thing that comics talk about is reading a room, looking at a room and working out what's going to work in what audience for what audiences. And I think I'd be curious to get your opinion on this, Jen. One of the biggest factors about reading a room is how many of these people have chosen to be at this gig.
Mm.
And that makes a huge difference. A normal gig, a poster goes up in the venue, in the local area, sticks up on social media, and the room is full of people that see it and go, "Oh, we've not had a night out in ages. Let's get a babysitter and do that." People don't like wasting their time, they don't like wasting their money. In the main, they want to laugh. So if you say something vaguely funny, they want to have their investment in the gig
Mm.
confirmed.
Mm.
However, a corporate gig has none of those things
Yes.
in its favor. You might have a room of 100 people, they all know each other. Maybe some, little oik from the sales team just wants to try and pull a fit girl from the marketing team. None of them have chosen to be at comedy. It's just one office manager who says, "Oh, we're all nutters here. We love comedy."
Mm.
And you are behind the eight ball when you start. Is that a fair assessment of the situation, Jen?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. They've had a few drinks. They just want to chat to each other, like you say. They want to network or they want to pull. And they didn't sign up for some random Welsh woman to be talking to them about pubes.
Yeah. The flip side of the coin is that those gigs often pay a lot more than the
Yeah.
normal ones. So you just, yeah, think about a bag of sand landing in your bank account when the
Yeah.
deafening silence is over. Jed, you do brilliant accents when you talk. I would assume that goes back to your kind of drama days.
I don't know. I think I've always been a bit of like doing my mum's accent or
Yeah,
watching Neighbours as a kid and doing Australian accent. Just being the youngest of three siblings, I was absolutely desperate for attention.
right.
And so you do an Australian accent one time and people laugh and you're like, well, there we go. That's hey, if anybody I know is listening to this, that wasn't a thought through process, but it's the way I imagine it works because it's what I did and it's what like you say,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah,
and
yeah.
I do accents, but that's what I would probably trace it to if I was a psychologist.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fascinated with all that. I'm an amateur psychologist.
Mm,
It's quite science based, so I would have been crap at it, but I would have loved to have studied psychology or something like that at
mm.
university. I uh I get into all of that myself. What am I trying to say? You mentioned about having a sort of network of comedy pals that you chat stuff through with,
Mm.
and obviously listening to other sort of famous comics on different podcasts like this.
Mm.
The Milliken's Law is a really good one. Can you think of any other bits of advice over the
Oh,
years that you've thought, I'm banking that?
I've I've thought of one. I don't know if I'm attributing this correctly. Paul Revel, not Paul Revel, Nick Revel, I think made up this bit of advice, which was, and I didn't hear it from him. I heard it from someone from anyway,
Anyway,
saying, don't make your life horrible. But I've never been able to use that piece of advice. Or now I can because I drive. But I remember when I used to get the megabus all the time, or like yeah, megabus. It was horrible. It was getting up at a horrible hour in the morning to go and travel to flipping far, far away and kill a whole day somewhere, and then go and do a gig for not very much money, and then come back on the megabus and all this. And it's like that isn't going to just because you feel like you're being a bit of a martyr, it's not helping you. I mean, or is it? I don't know. But his bit of advice was don't make your life horrible. So if you can get a train instead of a megabus, do that. Or if you can drive instead of get a train, do that. And take yourself for a nice meal beforehand. I don't know if that bit of advice really applies to most of us because I think it's quite financially dependent. I haven't always been able to make it not horrible. And to this day, I still sometimes have horrible days. What other bits of advice? Loads of people say that you should always reference something in the room, like right from the very top. But then also people say just make sure you get a laugh right from the top, and the two aren't necessarily always. They don't always work hand in hand. Like for example, a couple of last week, I did a gig in a defrocked church. So it was a church. It looks like a church, but it's defrocked, which means it's not a church. It's not used as a church anymore.
oh,
And and I think so. I was just like I said to the people backstage, I was like, I wonder if anybody was here for the defrocking. And then people laughed, and I was like, did an orgy? Was it an orgy? Or something? And then people laughed. So I was like, oh, like I'll say that to begin the show. Not that I was testing anything out on them, but I just happened to say it. They laughed. So there we go. And they did not appreciate that. In the
uh,
room, there was just pure silence, pure anything I said to try and break the ice that I referenced in the room, pure silence, really odd vibes. We never got to the bottom of what the deal was with that audience because it was a tricky one for most of us. So that's this is it doesn't make my advice sound very good, but people do say reference something in the room just to show that you're in there with them because quite often if you just open with like so I was talking to my wife the other day, it's just clearly a script,
Mm.
but I always used to say open by saying like, "Oh, thank you for such a nice welcome." Um, it's weird because I had a weird or reception, or I had a weird reception the other day, and so it's like even though it's like very tenuously linked to the room,
No,
it kind of is because you've started the sentence with. Um,
no,
but I mean that used to
definitely,
work back in the day. I don't like I
definitely.
don't open with that anymore. But
Yeah.
But yeah, just saying something like, or if there's something weird in the room or funny to reference, but then all at the same time, you could be like last on in the show, and every other act that's been on before you has been like, "What's the deal with these lights?"
You're right. I would agree with what you just said there, Jen. A comic once said to me, a good comic talks with an audience, a bad comic talks at an audience.
Mm,
But
mm,
what you're doing is you're giving the illusion that it's a
mm,
conversation because
mm,
it's not. You
mm.
know what you're going to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
But to get people, I've noticed exactly that. Like, say you've got a bit about how Butlins is full of scummers, right?
Mm.
I've just thought of that,
Right.
but I did. That did cross my mind the last time I was in Butlins. Uh, if you just start by saying, "Oh, I was at Butlins the other day, and there was a hen do," right? People are kind of curious, but what I've found is if you say to a room of people, give us a cheer if you've ever been to Butlins. You have there. And tell me, madam, did you feel like you were in Jeremy Kyle's green room? And you have a little bit of a chat
Yes.
about that. And then you say, I was there the other day and there was this hen do.
Mm,
The room is immediately more bought in to what
mm.
you're saying
Yes.
as opposed to just starting off talking about the hen do. And you're
Yeah.
right, and it's a little bit tenuous. Yeah, that's funny what you say about the church. Like people don't realize that anything could be a gig, all right? Anyone doing anything could say, "Do you know what we need in here? Stand-up comedy." And they could put an advert on a comedy forum and say, "I need an MC and three acts, apply here." And you could turn up and you could be doing comedy while a vet is putting people's pets down. And that's the gig. And you turn
Yeah,
up and
yeah,
you're like, oh, really?
yeah, yeah.
A pal of mine, going back to the Edinburgh Fringe, a pal of mine, some bright spark in a marketing meeting for an airline. They had an idea. Oh, hey, everyone's flying from London to Edinburgh for the Fringe. Why don't we hire a comedian to tell jokes at the front of the plane?
Yeah, oh God.
And that is the definition of a captive audience.
Yes.
And he said he started with his best stuff,
Mm.
and it was it was blatantly obvious within about 12 seconds that no one in the plane wanted
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah.
And that's the gig. And
That's it's so weird, isn't it? It's like because with the church ones, I said to them, "Is anybody?" Because I'd realised that I wasn't going to be able to just do material at them. I was going to have to like talk to them because of such a weird vibe. And so I said, "Is anybody celebrating it?" And I think which is really like kind of cliched and embarrassing to
oh,
say as an MC, but
yeah,
sometimes you're clutching at straws. So I
yes.
said, "Has anybody got a birthday or a hen do or anything?" And there was like pure silence. So I said, "Okay, we're just all here for a funeral." nothing, still just nothing. And I was like, yeah, are people's pets being put down in the car park? Like, is that why people are here? Because this is not. But it's like gigs that are deliberately set up to for you to die. Like, did you ever do the Walnut Tree in Maidstone?
Yeah, 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 I
And it had a
did.
blue plaque on the wall which said hundreds of comedians have died here over the years. It's like that's because you're making it a hostile environment because you used to have to perform on a little pallet in an empty bar and there was a camera on the ceiling
Yes, yes,
and
the camera.
yeah, and then the screen was displayed to people in the other bar, so you didn't have any audience in the room that you're performing in. Mad, mad. And
No,
they must have just wanted you to die. And so it wasn't really a gig, it was more of a kind of spectacle.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Oh God, no. It's. I mean, with my pr promoter's hat on,
mm,
the first thing that springs to mind about doing a gig in a church is the high ceiling.
yes. And I mean, the promoter did say, oh, the high ceiling, it means the laughs go up. There
That's right.
weren't any laughs to go up. There simply weren't. There was no, yeah.
Because part of it as well is that I think a lot of people would have been going into that room almost like they're in church mode. Like, what do you do in church mode? You just quietly
Yeah.
and reverentially sit down and, maybe stand up and sing, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, I
not.
said at the start, I could see a couple of people like kind of laughing and like covering their mouths. And I was like, you got to let the laughter out. Let it
Yeah.
out. Otherwise it'll come out the wrong hole. And it like that got like a couple more of them, but still they were just like suppressing it. And sure enough, at the end, their feedback is really great night. The audience were a bit tough though. It's like you were the audience. But one thing that I think is really important in those scenarios, um, and I did like reference it not going well, and I did like make a couple of jokes about how restrained they were. But if you keep wanging on at them about what a shit audience they are,
Yeah.
they will go, um, actually fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're not having a nice time anymore. So it's fine. I think it's fine to like make a joke about them being reserved um or whatnot, or just like a kind of self-deprecating one about how like now you might want to follow me to find out what will become of me.
Yeah.
Like, but if you make it about them having brought shit vibes, then they'll go, well, maybe you're just not that funny because
I
nobody
think
wants it to be their fault. So
I think you can reference it once, but
mm,
I don't think you can keep going back to it for exactly the reason
mm,
that you said there. But no, I totally agree. I always say when I MC, I don't know if it's hack or not, and to be honest, I don't really care. I always say to audiences, you have more of a bearing on this night than you think you do. If you
mm,
find something's funny, don't don't suppress it,
mm.
laugh loudly, and that will encourage other people in the room to laugh.
Mm,
And what that means is, provided it's not a really high ceiling, the comic gets the audience's laughs, they then kind of open the taps. They're like,
mm,
oh fuck, they're getting this. Cool, I'll
mm,
do this bit. I sometimes don't do this bit.
mhm.
Sod it, I'll do it, and I'll commit to it because
Yeah.
they're laughing. And
Mhm,
I always tell people that people don't realize what a what an important role they have. They just think it's passive and it's nothing to do with them. But
yeah.
it's a kind of two-way street comedy, isn't it?
Symbiotic. Yeah,
It's
yeah, totally.
symbiotic.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Mhm.
the word. Yeah, that gig in Maidstone. I did do that a couple of times. Horrendous setup. What moron thought that would be?
I
And I
know.
remember cost of the it was a tiny little compartmentalized old pub, and they realized they didn't have room for a stage and the punters. So as Jenny said, they got a camera with a live feed going round the corner to a screen where all the punters were, and there would be like a satellite delay
Delay, yeah.
between you telling the joke, silent, and it's like this is
Yeah. It's like
this is
I didn't
just
need to
so
drive all
wrong.
the way to Maidstone for a radio gig. Like, let me just do it from my house, you pricks.
Yeah, you could have just
Yeah.
done it on Zoom now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There have been some apocryphal stories about out of the way gigs and people not doing very well at them. One of the funniest ones I ever heard, it was a pub in the middle of nowhere, and the the promoter arranged a taxi from the venue for the act to get back to the station for the last train back into London. And the, again, terrible room setup. If anyone watching this is thinking of setting up a room, think about what the audience are going to be seeing. Think about where the toilets are in relation to the stage. Think
Yeah.
about what's behind the stage. All of these different things people just overlook, but it's not actually rocket science. This gig, the headline act had what is politely known in the trade as a slow start. About 5 or 10 minutes in, no laughs until the door opens behind the stage and a bloke walks in and goes, "Cab for the comedian."
Oh,
If I'd have been on that stage, I'd have been tempted to have said, "Just give us 30 seconds, mate. Thank you. Pick up my coat and just go."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They might not have involved you, Jen, but have you heard any particularly standout, funny, dying stories that you've heard over the years?
I mean, I don't know how many comedians you've had on this, but you will have no
Go on.
doubt. Pardon?
Go on. Do it
Okay.
now
Well,
anyway.
have you heard the dumb waiter one?
Go on. No.
Okay. Go. Well, you say go on. You've heard it. I mean, I've given away the part. Anyway, so
Jen,
basically,
not everyone watching this is going to be comedy nerds like me and you.
okay. So, a comedian was doing a gig at, I believe it was a wedding, and he is a very tall man, was wearing a suit, died on his hole really badly, and it's on like the first floor of this big sort of venue. And yeah, he's died on his ass. And then he goes to the back, goes off stage and into the room behind, which is the kitchen. And he's like, that was so bad. I died so hard. But I can't go back through them to leave the venue. Um, I don't make me walk through. And then the stairs are through that big room that they've just been in. So he's going to have to go back through that room. So he's like, I can't face them. Is there no way downstairs from here, from the kitchen? And they said the only thing that we could do is put you in the dumbwaiter and to take you downstairs. And he goes, well, fuck, let's do that then, because yeah, that's the only way. So he get after a bit of faffing about and emptying the dumbwaiter and whatnot, he gets into it. And bear in mind, he's a tall man. He has to like crodgle himself up like a spider to get into the dumbwaiter. But in the time that it's taken for that decision to be made and to be happening, all of the guests have gone downstairs to the dance floor or ballroom, whatever, and the dumbwaiter descends into that room, and the little door opens, and he's there. And then this crowd of people are kind of suddenly aware that there's like something happening, and it's the comedian who's just died, like revealing himself to clamber out of this dumbwaiter like he was doing an extra bit. And And yeah, that so I think that's like one of the kind of legendary
Yeah,
stories of like death and
the fi
humiliation.
the final the final drop of humiliation for the
Yeah,
evening. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
perfect. I don't know if you've ever done it. I've done it a few times where I've died and had to walk through the crowd
yeah,
that you've just died in.
yeah,
And
yeah. And when you're walking with the other comics and they go like the one of the other comics will be in front of you or behind you, and someone in the audience will stop them and be like, "You were amazing," and then they kind of just let their eyes go out of focus while they go past you.
yeah, yeah. Oh man alive. One more thing I wanted to ask you about because I find it interesting. Comedians talk about hack stuff. You've referenced it briefly once or twice. Twice. Hack comes from, I think, the Hackney comedy scene from years and years ago, and comedians use it when they mean something that's been done to death.
Mm,
I've got this theory that I'm curious to get your opinion on.
mm,
I think there are some comics who fall into the trap of being more interested in making their peers laugh, i.e., the other comics watching from
mm,
the side of the stage or the back of the room, and they sometimes lose sight of making the punters laugh in the room. Like
mm,
I've done gigs where someone's done something that I personally, having done, I don't know, 1,500 gigs, I've heard dozens of times. Like, I don't know. I spent so long on internet dating that now when I meet people in real life, I want to swipe them left or right. Something
mm,
like that. And
mm,
I kind of, oh, here we go again. But you just reminded me that bit after where punters are feeding back to comics. I can remember one gig where there wasn't a green room. We were just sat at one of the like tables in this
mm,
big room that everyone was in. This act came off having done that bit, and about two or three punters came up to her and said, "Oh my God, that stuff about the swiping left or right, that's brilliant, that is. I have thought
mm.
that, but I've never actually heard anyone say it." And it made me kind of step back and go, yeah, hang on a minute. Who am I trying to make laugh here? Is
Mm,
it for the other comics in the drive home,
mm,
or is it for, the actual bread
mm,
and butter, the people that were actually there to entertain,
mm.
the punters? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's funny, yeah. There's been times where I've had a bit where the punchline that I think is the funniest bit kind of goes fine, but like a just an incident like throwaway line in the middle of it gets suddenly the biggest response. And you're like, oh well, that's what the audience like about that bit.
Right.
Maybe I should focus more on that. So yeah, it is like I wouldn't consciously write stuff where I'm like trying to make comedians laugh. But it is interesting how an audience will go, oh no, the funny bit is that bit that you nearly didn't say, or the bit that you kind of threw away, or the bit that or if you say something for the first time and you like phrase it in a certain way and it's just meant to just get you to where you want to be, like it's just meant to set up the idea,
Yeah.
but that's the bit that they like. You're like, oh well, they I guess they know it better than I do.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm,
think, as we said earlier on, like to get good at anything, you have to be a nerd. You have to kind of be relatively, I suppose, obsessive with it
mm,
in order to get good at it.
mm,
But I think it's worth reminding yourself that
mm,
a lot of people in that room, that might be, it might be the only comedy show they'll go to all year. It might be the second or third comedy show they'll go to all year. So sometimes I think it's worth we got a gig in South London, and I would sometimes, my parents used to live near it. And when I was visiting my parents, say on a sort of sunny Saturday, I would fly at the beer garden.
Mm,
And I had a little patter. It was like, flying at Edinburgh. I'd go
yeah.
up to a table and say, "Excuse me, everyone, I'm not homeless. Me and my friends run a comedy night here, and you seem like the type of people that would get it. I'll just leave you a flyer." And someone picked up the flyer and said, "Oh, yeah, I saw this last month. It was good."
Mm.
And I said, "Oh, brilliant. Well, we're doing it again in 3 days. It'll be me hosting it, but I'll do different stuff and it'll be a totally different set of comics who'll be there." And
Mm.
they go, "No, no, I saw it last month.
Oh,
Like I've kind of got my fill. That will do me. That will do me now for the next 6 months."
no.
And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. We've got Paul Sinner coming and he's amazing. You've got to see it." But they're like, "No, mate, listen to what I'm saying to you. I'm done now. I'm good for." And
Yeah.
I think there's some benefit of obviously obsessing if you do it, but also being mindful of the fact that there are other groups of people who aren't as much into it as what you are.
Oh God, it's so humbling, isn't it? When you realize that people aren't as obsessed with it as we are. In the past, when I've housemates or like friends of friends, where they go, "Oh yeah, we went to Top Secret last night," and I'm like, "Oh cool, who was on?" And they went the previous night, so they're like last night, and I was like, "Who was on?" They could not tell me a single name.
No way. No,
And then
no.
they can't they'll be able to tell you one person's like half an idea of one of the jokes that they heard,
No, I
but
know.
it'll just be they'll be like, oh yeah, they had a really funny bit about, yeah, it was something to do with like the 9 o'clock news, just something completely generic that you wouldn't be able to tell who. And you're like, that is so humbling that you do these gigs and you care so much about how it goes,
Mm,
and whether they
mm,
liked you, or if people followed you. Like, it's lovely when people follow you after a gig, because you're like, oh, they liked me enough to remember my name and to follow me and to know what else I'm doing, or maybe they would buy tickets in future to see me. But the majority of the audience will just leave going, huh, yeah, that's all right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I
I know.
laughed.
I know a pub that's still open. Should we go around the
Yeah,
corner and get one?
yeah. Should we
And
go and have two more drinks and wipe the whole night from our memory?
that's
Yeah,
it. That's
yeah.
it. There's a thing that psychologists have identified called an egocentric bias, and it's also called the spotlight effect. And that is the
Mm.
phenomenon where the speaker thinks they're more under a spotlight than they actually are. And it ties into exactly this. They did an experiment in America in the 1990s. What they did was they split people up into one speaker, 20 audience members, and in a different room, they gave the speaker a Barry Manilow t-shirt to wear. And the speaker's like, "Ain't you got a Nirvana one?" And they're like, "No, we ain't got Nirvana. Put that one on." So the speaker's like, "Oh, Christ, stick it on, go out, do a talk, bring them back into a separate room." And they say to them, "Right, what percentage of that lot will remember what t-shirt you were wearing?" And the speaker goes, "Well, 100%. They're all looking at me for 10 minutes. Well, maybe not 100, maybe not 100. 80%. The actual number when they interviewed all of the audience members was 47%.
Oh, wow.
And we
Oh,
have
that is
just,
surprising.
yeah, it is. You've just got this idea because you're
Mm,
on a stage and everyone's
mm,
looking at you that
mm,
you are under this like gigantic microscope.
mm.
But they're all thinking things like, "Oh, my kid was a bit sick tonight when I left him with the babysitter. I hope they haven't
Yes.
been sick again." Or,
Yeah.
"I hope England win on Saturday." Or, "When's it going to stop raining?" Whatever it is,
Yes.
everyone's just got their own things going on. And as
Totally.
comics, you spend, you know, hours and hours and hours phrasing, ordering of stuff within a
Mm.
joke, ordering jokes within a set. And yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I think it's worth bearing in mind.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Setting your expectations.
Yeah.
Jen, you mentioned about follows on social media. In fact, one thing that you said earlier that I didn't have time to mention because we were talking about something else. I've learned something today. I've learned about hate follows. Is that a thing?
I mean, I think it is. I
I
mean,
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying I've never heard of it.
just in terms of like, if you do a gig, and I say it on stage, but it is somewhat true that if you have a gig that's remarkably shit, you'll have people going like, maybe not a hate follow, but like a curiosity follow. Like, what the hell is the deal with that girl? Like, how does she is she how, how does she live her life being that hateable? You know. So, um, I hope that the majority of my followers are following me for the right reasons, but I do think that you do get some people who follow out of curiosity and out of uh, but I don't know. I'm it's pure spotlight effect. Overthinking it, just thinking more of analyzing it more than it really needs to be.
Maybe so.
Maybe the people who follow me from the death gigs are just people who really did enjoy it but were too embarrassed to laugh, and
Right.
they are like my hardcore fans because they're like, despite how shit you were, we loved you.
Yeah. I once died so hard at a gig at Chippenham Rugby Club. And when I drive on the M4, there's still a sign for Chippenham, and I get a little. Did you ever gig with a guy called Johnny Katz, the Aussie?
Yes.
It's like this fucking straight talking Aussie, mate. And I was driving him. We were car sharing. I was doing the spot and Johnny was closing. And I started just terribly. God knows what I was thinking. Now I run shows. I'm always saying to acts, stick with the gold, start with the gold. But when I was an actor, I'd be like, I talk about that, I talk about that. And
Yeah.
sometimes it would work, sometimes it would die horrendously. And we
Yeah.
got back in the car, and Johnny's like, do you normally start your gigs with that kind of stream of conscious shit?
Whoa.
And I said, I've actually never started a gig like that in my entire life. And he said, well, why the fuck did you do it then? And I said, I don't know. But he's gone back to Australia now, and my wife's Australian. We actually caught up in Melbourne when we were there a few years ago. But later on that drive, he said to me, "Do you know what, Sam? I like you." And I said, "Do ya?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I like comics who either do really well or fucking bomb." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I I definitely did that." Jenny Collier, this podcast has just flown by.
Yes.
I've
What is it, an hour already?
I think it's like more than that. I think it's like an hour and 20.
Oh wow, I've really wanged on.
Oh, it was brilliant. Jen, you mentioned that you get more follows after gigs. You will also be inundated with an avalanche of new follows, having appeared on before, during, after. I was
Wonderful.
wondering if people want to see more of you, either online or in person, how is the best way for them to do it?
The best way to do it is so online, I'm Jen Collier on everything. And I've got a website which tells you where my gigs are. I try and keep it as up to date as possible, but that's where you can see where I am in physical space.
And what is the website address?
JennyCollierComedy.com, I think.
Awesome.
You can Google it. Yeah.
When this goes live, maybe I'll send you a link to it to pop it on the website.
Wonderful. Yes, I will.
How about we do that, Jenny? I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been such a laugh. I've really enjoyed it. I
Me
I hope
too.
I hope you found it fun as well.
Yes, thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure, and I very much hope our paths cross in real life soon, Madeiri.
Yes.
There you have it. I love Jenny Collier. I think there were loads of takeaways from that, but here are three right now. Number one, be aware of your most creative environment. Did you notice when I asked Jenny, she answered straight away because part of her job is coming up with material that she can use on stage. Number two, a golden rule of storytelling is to keep a story bank. Think about what happy, sad, weird, painful, funny things have happened to you. Comedians waste nothing, nor should you. Number three is a pro mindset, and that is not to get too high when things are going well or low when things are going badly. Just keep going. That one takes time to master, but I think it's something that it's good to aspire to. It certainly is for me, anyway. Thanks for listening to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. If you enjoyed this, then why not share it with someone who you think might get it? And give us a follow while you're at it. See you next time.